On a quiet coastal town where the sea whispers secrets and the skies paint warnings no one dares to see, one silent observer uncovers patterns that could save lives or cost everything. What happens when nature speaks, but only a few are willing to listen? If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where you are watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. In a quiet coastal town, where the ocean whispered secrets to the shore, lived a young man named Noah. He was not known for bold speeches or heroic deeds. Instead, he was the kind of person who slipped into the background, unnoticed by most. Yet Noah carried within him a gift, one he never spoke about, one that kept him awake during the still hours of the night. Noah had the rare ability to see patterns others ignored. While people hurried to work, to markets, and to daily routines, he watched. He watched how the tide shifted at unusual times. He saw how the clouds gathered in shapes that seemed to tell silent stories. He even noticed how birds moved in the sky in a way that looked less like random flight and more like a language waiting to be read. One evening, as the town prepared for its usual calm, Noah noticed something strange. The seabirds began circling in wide arcs over the rooftops. Their calls carry the sharper tone, restless, uneasy. At first, people laughed. Just birds being birds, they said. But Noah stood still, his eyes fixed on the sky. He knew this was not ordinary. The patterns were deliberate, almost like a warning only he could understand. His heart pounded as he followed the birds toward the shoreline. The sky darkened sooner than usual, though no storm had been forecasted. The townsfolk continued their routines, unaware of the growing unease above them. But Noah felt it deeply. Something was about to change, something larger than he could yet explain. In those moments, silence wrapped around him. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence before something begins. Noah could not ignore it. He remembered times in the past when small signs had whispered to him. A certain way the waves broke before a storm, or the sudden stillness of trees before heavy rain. He had always kept those thoughts hidden, afraid of being dismissed or mocked. But this time was different. As he stood at the edge of the cliffs, he realized the birds were forming lines across the sky, almost like arrows pointing inland. He whispered to himself, "What are you trying to say?" The wind carried no answer, only the restless beating of wings. Back in the village, children played near the market square, while elders sat telling stories of the past. No one noticed the shifting air, the subtle warning signs of nature. Noah wanted to tell them, to shout that something was coming, but his voice faltered. What proof did he have, other than a feeling stitched together from patterns invisible to others? The suspense built within him. Should he stay silent, as he always had, or should he risk speaking out? The pull of fear held him back, but so did the weight of responsibility. If he ignored the signs and disaster followed, could he live with that silence? That night, Noah returned to his small home near the harbor. The ocean's waves struck harder against the rocks, as though echoing the urgency in his chest. And so, in that small coastal town, Noah's story began. Not with thunder or fire, but with a silence that spoke louder than words, and a pattern in the sky that no one else dared to see. The morning sun stretched across the coastal town, painting the sea in soft gold. While the villagers carried on with their daily routines, Noah remained restless. The strange flight of the birds still echoed in his mind. He carried the weight of a truth no one else seemed to see. His notebook, filled with sketches of tides and skies, had become his only companion in silence. But whispers travel faster than the tide. In the narrow streets, at the market stalls, people had begun to murmur about Noah's odd behavior. Some said he spent nights on the cliffs, staring at the horizon. Others claimed he scribbled strange codes in his notebook. To most, these were harmless stories, but to a newcomer in town, they were sparks of curiosity. Her name was Layla. She had arrived only weeks ago, carrying a camera and a notepad. Layla was an aspiring journalist, searching for a story that could make her mark. While others dismissed rumors about Noah, she listened with sharp interest. What if this quiet young man carried a story no one else dared to tell? One afternoon, Layla followed him from a distance. She watched as Noah walked beyond the edge of town, toward the cliffs overlooking the sea. He stood there for a long time, his eyes scanning the sky, his hand scribbling in his notebook. To Layla, it looked less like madness and more like focus. A gust of wind lifted the pages of his notebook, and she caught a glimpse of markings, circles, arrows, and sketches of birds in formation. At first glance, it looked like nonsense, but the longer she observed, the clearer it became. Noah was tracking something. Later that evening, as the town settled into its usual rhythm, Layla approached him. Her voice carried curiosity, not judgment. "You watch the skies, don't you?" she asked. Noah froze, surprised. Few had ever spoken to him about his observations. "I just notice things," he replied quietly. "Things others don't." Instead of walking away, Layla pressed further. "And the birds, they mean something, don't they?" Noah hesitated. Should he trust her? For years, he had kept his thoughts hidden, fearing ridicule. But something in Layla's eyes carried honesty. So, cautiously, he opened his notebook and showed her the pages. She leaned closer, scanning the lines and sketches. "These are patterns," she whispered. "You're finding a rhythm." Noah nodded. Nature speaks in ways we ignore. The birds, the tides, even the wind. They tell us when change is coming. I just try to listen. From that moment, a quiet partnership began. Layla returned the next day, and the day after. Together, they watched the skies and mapped the movements. Soon the patterns revealed more than warnings of storms. They seemed to mirror events in people's lives, sudden sicknesses, unexpected meetings, even accidents that no one could predict. Suspense deepened. The more they studied, the clearer it became that something larger was at work. Nature was not random. It was whispering, guiding, perhaps even protecting. Yet only they seemed willing to hear. Still, doubt lingered. "People won't believe us," Noah said. "They'll call it coincidence, or worse, madness." Layla shook her head. "But what if they're wrong? What if this is the story they need to hear? A story of signs hidden in plain sight." Days turned into weeks, and whispers of the unknown grew louder in their minds. They noticed storms predicted by bird flights, market shortages hinted by the winds, and small personal events reflected in the sky. Every discovery carried both awe and fear. The bond between them strengthened, built not on romance, but on shared wonder. Noah, once weighed down by silence, found his voice through Layla's curiosity. Layla, once searching for a headline, discovered something greater, the power of listening to the world in ways few dared. Yet with every answer, more questions emerged. Why now? Why in this town? And what force lay behind these whispers of the unknown? As twilight fell one evening, Noah and Layla stood again at the cliffs. The sky burned orange, and above them, birds cut sharp angles through the air. The patterns were faster, more urgent than before. Layla's eyes widened. "They're warning us again," she said softly. Noah gripped his notebook tightly, his chest heavy with unease. "This isn't just about the weather anymore," he whispered. "Something greater is coming." The suspense hung thick in the air, like the calm before a storm. The whispers had become a voice, and the voice was growing louder. Neither Noah nor Layla could turn away now. Their search for truth had only begun. The days that followed were uneasy. The patterns Noah and Layla had tracked began to sharpen, each more urgent than the last. Birds flew in jagged lines above the rooftops, restless and loud. The sea struck harder against the rocks, as though impatient. The air itself carried a weight that pressed down on the town. Most villagers noticed nothing unusual. They went about their routines, their laughter filling the marketplace, their songs rising from the taverns at night. Yet to Noah and Layla, the warnings had never been clearer. The storm was not only coming, it was near. One morning, Noah woke to find the sky darker than it should have been. Heavy clouds gathered with unnatural speed, and the horizon looked like it had been swallowed whole. He rushed to the cliffs, notebook in hand. The birds flew in frenzied spirals, their cries piercing the silence of dawn. Layla arrived shortly after, her camera slung across her shoulder. She did not need to ask what was happening. She saw it in the sky, in the waves, in the panic of the birds. "It's happening now, isn't it?" she whispered. Noah nodded. His chest tightened as he flipped through his notes. Every line, every sketch, every warning he had traced pointed to this moment. "The storm is coming," he said, his voice trembling, "and it will not be small." The first drops of rain began to fall. Light at first, then harder, as if the sky was breaking open. Thunder cracked in the distance, rolling toward the town. Together, Noah and Layla ran through the streets, trying to warn anyone who would listen. "A storm is coming," Layla called out. "You must find shelter now." But most shook their heads, laughing nervously. "No storm was forecasted," they said. "The weather is fine." The rain grew heavier, pounding against the cobblestones, flooding the narrow paths. The sea roared louder, waves climbing higher, threatening to spill into the harbor. Still, many ignored the danger until the wind began to howl, tearing through the town with furious force. Panic finally spread. Families rushed indoors. Market stalls collapsed under the weight of wind, and fishing boats pulled against their ropes, nearly breaking free. In the chaos, Noah and Layla stood firm. Guided by the patterns they had studied, they led groups of people toward higher ground. They pointed to safe paths away from the water, away from the falling trees. At first hesitant, the townsfolk began to follow, their fear now stronger than their doubt. The storm raged with a fury the town had not seen in years. Roofs were torn away, windows shattered, and the harbor disappeared beneath waves. Lightning split the sky in blinding flashes, and thunder echoed like drums of war. Yet, in the midst of this chaos, Noah's calm voice cut through. "This way," he urged, guiding a group of children and elders up a narrow trail. "Follow the line of trees. Stay close. Do not look back." Layla stayed beside him, shouting directions when his voice was drowned by the wind. Together, they moved people towards safety, step by step, even as the storm pushed harder. For Noah, this was a revelation. The silence he had carried for so long was no longer a burden. It was strength. Every observation, every moment of doubt had prepared him for this. Nature had spoken to him in whispers, and now he understood why. The storm lasted through the night, each hour heavier than the last. But while the town was battered, lives were spared. People huddled together in safe places, guided by the warnings they once doubted. As dawn broke, the storm finally loosened its grip. The clouds began to thin, and the sea slowly calmed. Broken homes and shattered streets marked the damage, but the people had endured. Noah stood on the cliffs once more, his clothes soaked, his notebook clutched tightly in his hand. Layla stood beside him, exhausted but unbroken. Below them, the town was scarred but alive. They listened. Layla said softly, "Because of you." Noah shook his head. "Not because of me. Because of the signs. I just paid attention." In that moment, Noah no longer feared his gift. He no longer felt the need to stay silent. He understood that his ability was not a curse of solitude, but a bridge between the unseen world and the people around him. The storm within him had passed, just as the storm outside had. And though questions still lingered about what the patterns truly meant, Noah and Layla knew this was only the beginning. The sea whispered again, calm but powerful. And above them, the birds circled once more, not in warning, but in quiet rhythm, as though reminding them that nature's voice would always be there for those willing to listen. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered in the broken streets and scattered rooftops. The coastal town, once lively with the rhythm of ordinary days, now carried the scars of the night. Fishing boats lay overturned, wooden beams littered the shore, and homes stood open to the sky where roofs had been torn away. Yet despite the damage, the town was alive. Lives had been spared, and the people knew deep down that it could have been much worse. In the quiet that followed, villagers spoke in hushed tones. They remembered how Noah and Layla had guided them when the wind howled and the sea rose. They remembered the urgency in their voices, the way they pointed to higher ground when danger pressed in. For the first time, the silence that surrounded Noah did not seem strange. It seemed powerful. Layla sat by the harbor, her notebook open, her pen moving quickly. She recorded the story, not just of the storm, but of the boy who had seen what others could not. Yet when she looked up, she noticed Noah walking away from the crowd, slipping back toward the cliffs as he always did. He was not standing in the middle of attention, not accepting praise or thanks. He was simply observing, his eyes on the horizon. "You don't want them to know the full story?" Layla asked, catching up to him. Noah shook his head. "They don't need to know me. They just need to know the truth. That nature always speaks, and that we must learn to listen." His words carried weight, heavier than before. Layla understood. She realized that Noah had never wanted recognition. His strength was not in being seen, but in being aware, in reading the world in ways most people ignored. Days passed, and slowly, the town began to rebuild. Neighbors helped one another repair roofs, children gathered wood from the shoreline, and fishermen restored their boats. Through it all, Noah remained on the edges, still observing, still listening. One evening, as the sun slicked low and the sea turned silver, Noah and Layla stood again on the cliffs. The air was calm, carrying no weight of storms. Yet the birds appeared, flying once more in formation. But this time, their movements were different. They did not fly in jagged lines or frantic spirals. Instead, they circled slowly, gracefully, creating a calm spiral above the cliffs. Layla watched in awe. "They're not warning us this time," she said softly. Noah nodded. "They're showing us balance. A reminder that even after chaos, there is peace." The sight was unlike anything either of them had seen before. The spiral seemed to stretch higher and higher, a symbol written across the sky. It carried no fear, no urgency, only calm. For Noah, it was a quiet revelation. His gift was not only about warnings of storms or dangers, it was also about hope, about renewal, about the beauty hidden in silence. For Layla, it was the closing of one story and the opening of many more. She knew the world needed to hear stories like this, stories that reminded people to look closer, to listen deeper, to notice the whispers of the unknown. When Layla finally published her article, she did not focus on Noah by name. Instead, she told the story of a town saved by signs that most had overlooked. She wrote of the storm, of the birds, and of the lesson nature had offered. The people read her words and felt a new sense of wonder. Some began to notice the way the trees swayed before rain, or how the sea carried moods like a living being, but Noah remained the same. Quiet, observant, walking along the shore at dawn and sitting on the cliffs at dusk. He did not crave the spotlight, nor did he need it. He had found peace in his silence and strength in knowing that his voice came not from loud words, but from patient listening. And so, as the town healed and life returned to its familiar rhythm. The horizon carried a new meaning. It was no longer just the line where sea met sky. It was a reminder that beyond storms, beyond fear, there was always renewal. The birds returned often now, their spiral dance marking the close of each day. Villagers would look up and smile, knowing the patterns above carried a message, even if they did not fully understand it. For Noah and Layla, it was enough to know they had witnessed something extraordinary. The story did not end with a grand celebration or a hero's reward. It ended in silence, a silence filled with meaning, a silence that spoke of balance, wonder, and the endless mysteries waiting to be discovered. And in that silence, as the waves rolled gently to shore and the birds circled against the fading light, the quiet horizon stretched wide, inviting all who looked to listen, to imagine, and to believe in the hidden language of the world.